Salam and welcome back to Somali Dispatch, somalidispatch.com. My name is Abdirizak Muhumed. Somalia's lower house elections currently underway seem to be facing challenges revolving around its deviation from the agreed upon processes. Somalia's intellectuals and organizations are currently raising the alarm as the electoral mismanagement could refer the country back to civil strife. Somalia's Heritage Institute recently wrote about the country's multitude of electoral challenges. Abdirizak Muhumed is a senior researcher at Heritage Institute of Policy Studies. He joins us from Mogadishu to discuss the issue today. Salam Abdirizak and welcome to Somali Dispatch. Thank you for your time and for accepting our invitation today and joining us.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me, Gulet.
Abdirizak, if you could start us off with an update on where we are with Somali elections as we speak today.
To begin with, where we are is now in the public domain. The election of the upper house concluded 3 weeks ago, and the lower house election started on the 11th. So 3 regional states have started, two regional states. That's Puntland and Southwest. Galmudug and Southwest, sorry, not Puntland. Galmudug and Southwest. And Somaliland election, which is held in, or representatives of Somaliland, lower house members of parliament, which is held in Mogadishu. So in Galmudug, so far 5 members of the lower house are elected. Southwest, 11 are elected, and 7 from Somaliland. But it is somehow a contested sort of election. So it seems that we're in a pause now, and 2 elections, 2 seats were disqualified, and it seems that negotiations are now going on, negotiations on whether to continue the election or to restructure or renegotiate the terms of the election.
Right. Before we get to the renegotiation, there seems to be inconsistencies in the way the elections were held. If the agreed upon processes in August and September were actually upheld, could you tell us some of the issues and the concerns that we've seen and the public is actually talking about these days, which is the elections are not as free and as fair as they should be, or even could have been if the process is followed. Could you give us a little bit of a background on how the lower house elections went, for example?
Glad, honestly, with the issue of free and fair election is not on the table. As you remember, the 2017, I mean, the 17 September agreement was the basis of what could be an indirect election, or rather selection in that regard. So 101 delegates were to be assembled, and that 101 delegates were to choose the electorates of each member of parliament. Given what has happened in the upper house election, which was basically manipulated and handpicked by the federal member states. But now these lower house elections are quite different from the upper house elections. The upper house elections, basically, the members of the upper house are representatives of federal member states, and they are few in numbers compared to the 275 members of the lower house. So these lower house members, the seats basically belong to the clans. So each clan was to be left alone in selecting its own or its preferred candidates. But what we have so far is the disregard of that agreement, the disregard of the resentment of the clans, the disregard of the whole process in that regard. So basically, it is neither a selection at this stage nor an election. It's just a sort of an appointment being done by the federal member states. And also from the federal government point of view, the accusations are also as equal as the federal member states. The accusations against the federal government that it's also manipulating the election, sometimes selecting some of the security agent members or members of the security forces in that regard, or intelligence security as candidates. Some people were outrightly rejected even to compete. So the basic rights of even competing is not there. And you know, the essence of an election, I mean, the basics is there has to be a competition, and there is no competition. It's just what in Somali these days known as malhis and somebody else. So basically, one should say it's a sham sort of a selection, and the outcome seems somehow to be predetermined before even the election is held.
Right. Abdirizak, lots of the highlighted issues stem from the National Consultative Council's role in the election process, and you know, their involvement in the agreement. What could be done in terms of you know, adjusting that process, and what is needed to move forward and to reinstate some sort of a legitimacy in the election process?
As things stand now, we are somehow in a pause, and as we said at the beginning, almost 2 seats are now disqualified, and there are voices that are speaking out, voices that are coming out are increasing by the number, either from the opposition, from the civil society, and even from the ordinary Somalis. So what could be done is basically to allow the clan, these seats belong to the clans. So the federal member states, their role should somehow be limited to the overall supervision or the overall conduction of the electoral process. But in this regard, the clans are somehow disregarded. They are not involved. They either even some majority of the federal member states are accused of choosing a fake sort of a clan elder instead of the genuine one. So they are basically replacing what the community could prefer, or what the community prefers as their genuine clan elders. They also bringing in people who are presented as members of the civil society, but they are not members of the civil society. Some of them are basically assumed that they are the security agents of either the federal government or the federal member states. Their personal helpers and all of that are presented, some of them either as elders or as members of civil society, which is not the case. So basically at this stage, nobody's expecting a perfect election. Nobody's expecting a free and fair election. That is not the case. That's not the discussion. But it somehow what we are anticipating, or people are anticipating in the upcoming negotiations, if they do happen, is to leave the clans to elect their own members of parliament.
Right, and the Prime Minister spoke on that on yesterday, and you know, with all that insistence, Abdirizak, is there a role, or should the role of the so-called stakeholders be expanded and perhaps include civil societies to ensure that the elections are inclusive and the process is followed?
That could have been a better outcome, but the National Consultative Forum now consists of the Prime Minister and the 5 regional presidents of the presidents of federal member states. And the initial agreement was to include members of the civil society, was to include genuine clan elders. But it seems, with all honesty, at this stage, that we will not expand anything. Basically, what people are asking is the National Consultative Forum at least should do or should revert to the initial agreement. But otherwise, expanding at this stage, already we are in the middle of the election. The environment is somehow not conducive. Suspicions are high. So all of that, I think, needs some sort of a strong intervention. Unless that intervention comes from the Prime Minister himself, I assume that the federal member states are quite reluctant to either allow the process to be inclusive as it should be, or at least open the political space so that other competitors whom the federal member states are not happy with could join the process. But for so long, I think we will stick to those to the 5 federal 5 presidents from the regional presidents and the Prime Minister.
Right. There seems to be a change in the way Somalia's international partners are engaged in this process, as this group, with being having the largest leverage in Somalia and what goes on in Somalia, especially the elections and funding security and such. What does their absence mean for everyone involved in this, or for Somalis in general?
As you rightly pointed out, the role of international community was regarded as an act of stability in that regard, or stabilizer in the case of Somalia's fragile governance. But I think their role has been somehow reduced to price statements, and somehow at this stage now they are withholding some of the funds that were supposed to be given to the Somali government in terms of conducting the election. But it seems that there is somehow a dawn of fatigue. The typical example of politics is local is quite applicable in Somalia. So it is all about the Somalis who are not Somali political elites who are now in control of the political vehicle, who are unable either to agree on anything. But the international community has been trying, has been pushing them at least to come together and somehow avert what could be a new wave of political instability in that regard. But all the presence of all the different actors in the Somali political arena, including the international community, are somehow disappointed of how things are going on. And I think the arm of the international community is not at this stage able to twist the direction of the election, but they somehow adapted a see and wait kind of mode in this regard. Yeah.
Right. If the current situation or the current election process is not reformed, or at least referred back to its spirit of the language of the agreement, what are the ramifications?
As you are aware, Guled, you see the Somali political arrangements has pillars, and one of the pillars is the 4.5 kind of arrangement. The other one is the federalism dispensation, and the third one, which is more important, is holding election after every 4 years. So that was part of Somalia's political settlement. So if that somehow, that tradition, because it has been a tradition from 2000 that that elections are held every 4 years, and elections has not been one person, one vote. It has always been an agreement reached by the political elite, whether it was indirect or the number was limited. But if now the election goes the way it is, if it's continued the way it is, the outcome will be contested, and it's highly likely that it is contested. Voice at least from the opposition corridors are coming out. Federal member states are also divided. So the possibility of a contested outcome, which could lead a new wave of violence, which some candidates might even declare that, or parallel governments, some candidates declaring themselves as presidents, others. So what we will have is basically a new wave of political instability, chaos. So a possibility or an outcome that Somalia at this stage cannot afford. So we hope that we may not go to that route, but if things go the way they are, the possibility of post-election violence is quite high.
I appreciate you summing up the heritage look at this and the paper that the institution wrote about this, and I am immensely thankful for you expanding on it and explaining to our audience what the ramifications are and where things went wrong, and perhaps how to get things back on the right direction. Abdirizak Muhumed, I really appreciate you joining us today. Thank you very much.
That's been a pleasure talking to you, Guled, and the dispatch team. Thank you.